President Moon Jae-in will speak with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump and even hold their own summit before the Washington-Pyongyang talks. International donors raised $4.4 billion in emergency aid for Syria and its neighbors, but the total falls well short of the UN target amount for 2018. This after the U.S. failed to submit a pledge. These and more coming up. Great to have you join us this morning. It is 7 a.m. Thursday, April 26th. Live from Seoul, I'm Shin Se-min. Applying the final touches, officials from the two Koreas held a dress rehearsal on Wednesday as they prepare for Friday's big summit. From the facilities at the venue to camera angles and the lighting, every detail was carefully coordinated. And the last round of rehearsal by South Korean officials takes place today. Our Lee Ji-won starts us off.
The two Koreas have completed their joint rehearsal for Friday's Inter-Korean Summit at the Peace House on the South Korean side of Panmunjom. The Blue House announced Wednesday that the joint rehearsal ran from the morning until 2:20 in the afternoon without mentioning the exact starting time. The South delegation was led by Kim Sang-kyun, Deputy Director of the National Intelligence Service, and the North by Kim Chang-sun, an official from Pyongyang State Affairs Commission. The rehearsal took place behind closed doors, and Seoul's top office said the two sides checked all the facilities, including camera angles, lighting, and the broadcasting system, as it's expected that people around the world will watch the two leaders meet live on television. Though there were no stand-ins for President Moon Jae-in or Kim Jong-un, the two sides rehearsed like it was the actual summit and made full use of the only joint rehearsal before the big day. They exchanged opinions on specific scenarios and even held the rehearsal at the exact same time as Friday's summit. With the Inter-Korean Summit being held for the first time in over 10 years, the South Korean government is doing everything it can to make sure that it runs smoothly. Seoul had its own rehearsal at the summit venue on Tuesday, where it examined the path people will take, the order of events, and even the furniture inside the building. And it'll hold its third and final checkup on Thursday, the eve of the summit. Thursday's rehearsal will have all 6 key aides who will accompany President Moon at the summit present. There are Chief Secretary Im Jong-seok, National Security Advisor Jong-un, National Intelligence Service Chief Seoul, Unification Minister Cho Myung-kyun, Defense Minister Song Young-moo, and Foreign Affairs Minister Kang Kyung-hwa. The North delegation who attended the joint rehearsal will remain in Panmunjom to prepare for Friday's summit. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
And on the day of the summit, we'll see President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un walk through a guard of honor at the Truce Village of Panmunjom. South Korea's Defense Ministry says the armed forces, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force will hold the event in honor of President Moon and leader Kim. Given the confined space at the Truce Village, the ministry says the Guard of Honor will be relatively small and informal. And in the previous 2 inter-Korean summits in 2000 and the year 2007, then South Korean Presidents Kim Dae-jung and Roh Moo-hyun walked through a North Korean Guard of Honor with the then leader Kim Jong-il, which is now remembered as one of the most symbolic scenes between the two Koreas. Officials from South and North Korea could be working under the same roof as President Moon Jae-in will suggest setting up a permanent liaison office between the two Koreas at the Truce Village of Panmunjom. The South Korean leader aims to utilize this opportunity to set up regular summits between South and North. Our Kim Hyo-sun with more.
President Moon Jae-in is expected to propose establishing a permanent joint liaison office between the two Koreas at Panmunjom when he meets with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Friday. While the issue has been discussed at high-level talks since late March, it's not yet certain whether the North will agree.
Negotiations have been carried out ahead of the summit, but most of the agreement will be finalized when the two leaders meet and talk.
The proposal is also in line with President Moon's goal of making progress on instituting regular, ongoing, and permanent dialogue between the two Koreas. President Moon is seeking to restore the agreement for an inter-Korean liaison office that was reached in 1992, which ultimately ended up being a direct phone line, each installed in the Freedom House in the south and Tongilgak in the north. However, the operation of such a direct channel was unstable and its use depended on the state of inter-Korean relations. A senior Blue House official explained that the plan seeks to set up a joint office and then build reciprocal liaison offices in both Seoul and Pyongyang. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Seoul's top security advisor made a surprise visit to Washington to meet with his American counterpart, John Bolton. There, the two agreed to continue close cooperation and communication to ultimately establish lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. Our Hwang Ho-jun reports.
Ahead of the historic cross-border summit, South Korea and the U.S. agreed to continue working closely together to ensure their respective summits with North Korea are successful. The presidential office of Cheong-wade announced on Wednesday that Seoul's National Security Office Director Chung Eui-yong met with the newly appointed U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton in Washington on Tuesday local time. Chung's visit to Washington was the second one this month alone. His meeting with Bolton took about an hour as they exchanged their views on the upcoming summits and pledged to continue close bilateral cooperation and communication.
Chung and Bolton agreed that President Moon and President Trump will hold a telephone conversation immediately after the Inter-Korean summit and discuss the summit's outcomes.
And apparently, there will be more than just a phone call. We can expect the leaders of Seoul and Washington to speak face-to-face soon after.
Chung and Bolton have also agreed to push for a meeting between the two presidents before the U.S.-North Korea summit.
President Trump has said his meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will likely take place in May or early June. President Moon has said time and time again that success at the Inter-Korean summit must lead to a successful summit between Washington and Pyongyang. That's the way to achieve complete denuclearization and establish lasting peace on the peninsula. The recent talks between the top security advisors of South Korea and the U.S. show both countries are determined to make that happen. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The United States has made it clear that there's no phased compensation for negotiations with North Korea when it comes to denuclearization. National Security Council staff at the White House say there will be no concessions to the North, stressing that Washington should not repeat the mistakes of previous administrations. Watchers say this can be interpreted as a reaffirmation to Washington's principle of no compensation before detailed measures are taken for a complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. President Trump has also made clear when meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron this week that the U.S. is seeking a complete denuclearization of the regime. With just 1 day to go until the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit, the world is watching, hoping for peace on the Korean Peninsula. Now, this includes Pope Francis, who has a message for the leaders taking part in the historic summit. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Pope Francis, who visited South Korea in 2014, urged the leaders of South and North Korea to have the courage of hope and become artisans of peace. Speaking at the Vatican on Wednesday, the pontiff asked for prayers for the two Koreas, saying the Inter-Korean summit was an opportunity to start dialogue.
On Friday, April 27th, in Panmunjom, there will be an Inter-Korean summit to be attended by the leaders of the two Koreas, Mr. Moon Jae-in and Mr. Kim Jong-un. This meeting will be a good opportunity to start a transparent dialogue and a concrete path of reconciliation and newfound fraternity in order to secure peace in the Korean Peninsula and in the whole world.
Addressing tens of thousands of people at his weekly general audience, Pope Francis called for a transparent dialogue between the two Koreas, urging the two leaders at the first Inter-Korean summit in more than a decade to act with courage to foster regional and world peace. He also expressed his personal prayer to the Korean people who want peace, adding that the Holy See supports every useful and sincere initiative to build a better future.
To the Korean people who ardently desire peace, I assure my personal prayer and the closeness of the whole Church. The Holy See accompanies, supports and encourages every useful and sincere initiative to build a better future in the name of meeting and friendship among peoples.
No matter their religion or beliefs, the world watches on as the Inter-Korean Summit may be the focal point in the future North Korea-U.S. summit and for peace on the Korean Peninsula. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The agenda for the historic meeting started out vague, but it's becoming more and more specific as we near the date. At the top of the list is definitely the issue of denuclearization. Our Oh Jung-hee tells us more.
The discussion topics for the leaders of Seoul and Pyongyang are becoming clearer as we near the summit date. Back in mid-March, South Korea's Summit Preparation Committee started its work with 3 major areas in mind.
We decided to focus on the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, creating a lasting peace with lower military tensions and making a leap forward in inter-Korean relations.
The most attention, of course, is on denuclearization. The specifics of the actual denuclearization process, however, such as inspections and verification, as well as a guarantee to the North Korean regime of its security in return, are things to be discussed at the North Summit with the U.S. Therefore, it's likely that the two Koreas will reach a comprehensive agreement reaffirming denuclearization as the goal in joint efforts to that end. The same goes for establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula. South Korea's presidential office is looking into the possibility of turning the 1953 Armistice Agreement into a formal peace treaty. But this is something that would need the assent of the other parties to the conflict, such as the U.S. and China. The two Koreas by themselves can only state that their own military hostilities are over. But there could be some specific measures that would lower military tensions. Currently being discussed is getting rid of heavy weapons and guard posts at the demilitarized zone. The fact that the two Koreas have stopped their propaganda broadcasts at the border this week raises the possibility that the DMZ could become truly demilitarized. Inter-Korean economic cooperation is not expected to be dealt with at the summit. That's because things like the Inter-Korean Industrial Complex at Kaesong and South Korean tours to North Korea's Mount Kumgang are tied in with international sanctions. Instead, the leaders are to touch upon making their summit a regular event or holding a reunion for separated families. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
And in the last run-up to our special pre-summit reports from the perspectives of stakeholder nations, today we turn to the U.S., who await their own North Korea summit expected to come sometime in late May or in early June. It is still unclear what to expect from the Trump-Kim meeting, but a successful inter-Korean summit will have to come first. Our Kwon Jang-ho brings us this report from the U.S.
When South Korea's National Security Advisor visited the White House in early March, few anticipated what would happen next.
He expressed his eagerness to meet President Trump as soon as possible. President Trump appreciated the briefing and said he would meet Kim Jong-un by May.
When Donald Trump suddenly accepted Kim Jong-un's invitation to meet, Washington was caught off guard. Although there's been some time to digest this move, opinions and hopes for the U.S.-North Korea summit remain mixed. Trump's seemingly unilateral decision to hold talks as soon as possible has turned the traditional order of diplomacy upside down. The extensive negotiations that normally take place before the leaders meet has been cut short.
There is very little that I think those of us who have been in the world of diplomacy would call normal about the upcoming meeting. I find it hard to believe they can go very far down the road. They can, in substance, there may be general agreement, but general agreement in the past between the DPRK and USA hasn't been such a terrific idea. Without the details laid on and the verification and the monitoring laid on with those details.
However, there are some who argue that it could prove to be the spark that moves things forward.
It is the opposite pattern of the way that diplomatic negotiations are normally conducted. However, there is a tradition, especially in Asia, of sort of the big men getting together, having a cup of tea, sort of sorting things out and leaving the details to their subordinates. That's what I see from these two individuals.
Everyone and their cousin would say do it the other way around. Have all the diplomats first, and the summit is the cherry on the top. You know, the summit between the two leaders comes last. On the other hand, we've been doing it that way for 65 years, and nothing has changed on the peninsula.
For a successful meeting, experts agree that South Korea has a crucial role to play in its own summit with the North.
One hopes that the South Koreans are able to make some progress in setting the stage for a U.S. DPRK discussion on denuclearization. And it would be great if there was a direct reference to denuclearization, you know, as part of what President Moon and Kim Jong-un are able to agree upon.
The inter-Korean process is and needs to be central if we're going to get someplace. One of the things that I actually find most significant and hopefully encouraging about what's going on now is that the Republic of Korea has played such an important role as a catalyst and as a shaper.
With so many uncertainties, expectations for the US-North Korea summit remain modest. But considering the tensions last year, North Korea watchers for now are breathing a sigh of relief and hoping it can pave the way for progress in the future.
We don't want to be too optimistic here. It's not like tomorrow North Korea is going to denuclearize and open up to trade and we'll have peace on the peninsula, right? That's not going to happen. So don't set it up as that it's a goal. But can we move the needle in the direction of less conflict? Absolutely.
At the very least, we want to move further away from the initiation of hostilities. If we can get through these two summits, we can get an improvement in the atmosphere and start a process, we would be doing very well.
Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
The latest film in the Marvel franchise, Avengers Infinity War, is one of the most anticipated movies of the year. And here in South Korea, it has the ticket sales to back it up, smashing the opening day box office record. The movie, which hit cinema screens across the country on Wednesday, saw more than 970,000 viewers on the day alone, making it the most viewed movie on an opening day. 94% of the roughly 1 million moviegoers on the day watched the movie, and the latest Avengers series surpasses the Battleship Island, which was released last year. And now to the markets. Wall Street pushed higher on Wednesday as the market recovered from a sharp loss the session before. The Dow Jones Industrial Average gained about 60 points to close the day at 24,083, ending a 5-session losing streak. The S&P 500 also moved higher, adding 0.2% at 2639, but the Nasdaq fell slightly to 7,003, continuing its losing skid since November 2016. And for a roundup of markets in Korea, shares were all down for a 4th straight day, with foreign investors leading the sell-off as U.S. bond yields rose above 3%. The benchmark Kospi was down 0.6% at 2448, while the junior bourse Kosdaq was also down 0.4% at 869. And now for a look at stories making headlines around the world. International donors have pledged just under $4.5 billion in humanitarian aid for Syrians affected by the country's civil war. For more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Do Aram at the News Center. Aram, the amount falls far short of the $8 billion and the UN was seeking.
That's right, Simon. Not exactly the amount the head of the UN aid agency was looking for. Mark Lowcock had warned that certain aid programs would have to be cut if funds weren't forthcoming. He made his plea at a donor conference in Brussels, which was attended by officials from both the UN and the EU. Despite falling well short of the amount hoped for, Lowcock said it was a good start and thanked the donors.
I want particularly to thank the EU, Germany and the United Kingdom, who've made exceptionally large pledges today. I want also to note that beyond 2018, we've had or are expecting during the course of the day pledges amounting to some $3.3 billion for 2019 and onwards.
He also noted that a few other large players, including the United States, have not yet confirmed their financing for this year due to internal budgetary discussions. He said the US has been providing more than $1 billion a year in humanitarian assistance to Syria and the region over recent years. However, it remains to be seen if that will continue under the Trump administration, as there is still some confusion over Washington's position in Syria. The UN aid agency is in desperate need to raise funds for the dire situation in the Middle Eastern nation, but has only managed to collect half of the money needed over the past couple of years. According to the UN, more than 6 million people are now internally displaced in Syria. More than 5 million have fled the country, and 13 million, including 6 million children, are in need of aid. Meanwhile, the conference was also a platform for EU officials to urge for UN-led peace talks in Geneva to restart. The previous 8 rounds of talks aimed at ending the Syrian war have gained little steam. EU diplomatic chief Federica Mogherini once again urged Russia and Iran to pressure their ally Damascus to engage in the negotiations. In other news, French President Emmanuel Macron has taken aim at several of President Donald Trump's policies in a hard-hitting speech to both houses of the US Congress. During Wednesday's speech, Macron denounced nationalism and isolationism and urged America to engage more in global affairs.
We can build the 21st century world order based on a new breed of multilateralism. This requires more than ever the United States' involvement, as your role was decisive for creating and safeguarding today's free world. The United States is the one who invented this multilateralism. You are the one now who has to help to preserve and reinvent it.
Macron also raised issues with Trump's policies on global trade, Iran and global warming. He urged the US to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, not to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal, and also embrace free trade. Violent anti-government rallies in Nicaragua have left at least 34 people dead, up from a previously reported 27. A leading rights group in the country said Wednesday it found more bodies in Managua's state morgue of people previously reported missing, and also added people who had died of wounds sustained in the protests. The week-long demonstrations were initially sparked by President Daniel Ortega's pension reforms, which he later scrapped amid mounting pressure.
Good morning. Expect spring warms across Korea all day, while neighboring countries will also have a sunny and warm Thursday. But big gaps in temperatures will continue. Single-digit morning lows will hike to the 20s in Seoul and other regions. But again, you will need a cardigan or light jacket for your morning commute. It is breezy outside. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. Seoul and Daejeon are waking up to a low of 8 degrees Celsius, but it's a lot cooler morning than yesterday for southern regions, including Daegu and Gyeongju, at a low of 6 and 3 degrees respectively. But these two cities will see highs soaring to 24 degrees by the afternoon, and Seoul will get up to 21 degrees Celsius. But the skies will not be as sunny as yesterday, but you need to have your sunblock ready. The weather looks promising for the next 5 days, with mostly sunny skies in the forecast. And in Panmunjom in Paju, Gyeonggi-do Province, where the Inter-Korean Summit will take place, will also have sunny skies with warm afternoon highs for the next few days. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that will do it for us at the hour, but keep it tuned to Arirang News as we bring you more news updates throughout today. And our next news lineup at 10 a.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.
네, 조선시대